2-minute lag using StreamYard.
Yes. Yeah, I have to. And especially like trying to show the screens and everything else, it's been lagging hard. And just the internet in general has been
Yeah.
super, super bad for me. I don't know why.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Same, but hopefully it keeps going because that's what my entire business is built on.
Exactly. Exactly. I was on the call with our internet service this morning, and they're like, "Yeah, we understand the importance of internet, especially during these times." I'm like, "Well, yeah, Len, it would be nice to have as I'm paying $100 a month. It'd be nice for this to stop happening."
I know. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
All right. Cool. Well, we are live. We have a little guest here. So hello to you guys watching live and everything. Welcome to our cash-based practice owners interview series. And we have the honor of having Mr. Javier here today. So thank you so much for being here.
No, thank you for having me. I'm super excited.
Yeah, me too. Javier and I have gone back now in our friendship at least a month. We have been talking about a ton of stuff related to business. And like I was just telling you before, like you just really make me smile with all the good stuff that you're putting out there into the world. So I'm really happy that you're here.
Thank you.
I know. Yeah, and I know a lot of people will be, really happy to hear all the cool stuff that to help them in their businesses and their practices.
Yeah, any way I can help.
Yeah. So we are going to go ahead and get started with kind of like some background info. So if you don't mind sharing with us where you came from and what got you to this point, all the good stuff, and let us know a little bit more about you.
Yeah, definitely. So again, thank you so much, Morgan, for having me. It really is an honor to be here. You've been doing some amazing stuff, and I'm super excited to get my hands on that mini course. So I'm not even playing around. I really want to dive into it. It's always good to refresh on a lot of stuff. So I'm excited for it, and you should all be excited about it too. So a little bit about me. So let's see, where do I even start? So I don't want to go too far back, but basically, so I'm a physical therapist. I've been a physical therapist now for 3 years, graduated back in August of 2017. And a little bit before, like backtracking a little bit more, I never really wanted to go into business ownership or entrepreneurship. It's something that it wasn't directly, but I think subconsciously I knew I did not want to do because my parents growing up, they had a business and they had it and it actually they built it rather quickly to the point that where they were making, it was a dry cleaning business where they opened up a second location. I think it was a couple of years after the first one. They were bringing in about $100,000 per year. $100,000 per month, not per year, per month. Yeah, it was booming. But being that, they didn't have a lot of education on the financial side of things, and they didn't really understand how money worked. When the recession hit early on in the early 2000s, they lost everything, and they were splurging, right? They didn't know how to manage their finances. They were spending a lot of money instead of investing it. And they bought, nice cars, a nice house. They bought me a dirt bike, all this, cool stuff, which was at the time I was like, this is awesome. But obviously it wasn't, because they lost it all, and they in a way got lucky. And they didn't really have the business skills, enough of the business skills and know how to evolve and adapt and be able to sustain their business. So because of that, they ended up getting divorced, and because of the finances, and that's like the number one reason for divorce, right? So they lost everything. I was torn apart, like, having to get rid of that dirt bike and everything else. It was a bad time. And I think that really stuck with me, because I always attributed, like, having a successful business or having a business at all to not being able to have a great family life too, right? And that was a big thing for me, because our family was so close, but like both sides. And when that happened, I was like, well, that's definitely not something that I want to happen to me and my future family. So I always had that in the back of my mind. So now kind of fast forwarding back to me going into PT school, right? It's a stable, secure job, right? Top 10 in demand in the country, a decent salary or high salary in our eyes, a few years ago.
Yeah.
And then just a great overall, profession to be in. You help people, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm like, okay, this sounds like something I'd love to do. So I got into it, right? First year was awesome, head in the books. It was great meeting new people. My first clinical internship, that's when I was like, whoa, like what's going on here? right? I started to see my CI, number one, wasn't a very nice person, but I started to hear a lot of talk about how people were frustrated in the profession, how they were feeling burnt out, how they were taking their work home with them, and they weren't able to have a lot of energy and spend a lot of time with their family. So it was the first clinical internship. So I was like, you know what, it can't all be this bad. And sure enough, it happened not one more time, but two more times. My fourth clinical internship was finally a good one. But that kind of stuck in the back of my mind. It's like the very thing that I was trying to avoid by not going into entrepreneurship, not going into business, was happening to these physical therapists and PTAs that I was working with as well. And that's when my gears started turning, and I was like, oh God, well, I definitely don't want that to happen to me either. Like, what can I do differently, or what do I have to do differently? And that's when I started searching for answers, right? Like many of you that are in this group, like something in your life right now is just might not be sitting right, or you want something more, right? If you're currently in a job, if you're in a corporate setting, if you're sick of dealing with insurance companies, like there's something that you're trying to get away from, and whatever that is, it's probably very similar for all of us, right? Mm-hmm. And I think for me it was I had to take the next step, and the way I started doing that was by listening to podcasts, right? Listening to interviews like this. I started listening to people who are doing things a little bit differently. And I remember my first mentor, I was listening to one of his podcasts, and in the podcast he said, don't follow the herd, for they will lead you straight to the slaughterhouse. And when I heard that, I was like, well, that's a bit aggressive. But at the same time, I was like, damn, like he's right. If you do what everyone else is doing, you're going to get what everyone else is getting. So at that point, that kind of like a light bulb went off. It's like, okay, I have to do something different. So I started to search for people who were doing things that I wanted to do, or actually who had the things that I wanted in life, right? And this guy had the successful businesses, and he had a great family life. And I know that because I started doing more research on him, right? And I started to listen to more people who had these things. And I started to realize that my past experience was not what it had to be like for everyone else going into business. And that's when I decided to start investing in myself, learning about business marketing, because obviously we didn't get any of that in school. And ever since that point, that's basically what got me on this trajectory, where I opened up a cash-based practice about 3 months out of school. I was still working full-time, but I had that on this. I was just hustling, trying to make as much money as I could and helping people. So I did that right out of school, and then kind of fast forwarding. So I did that for about 9 months. I was seeing 6 to 9 patients, patient visits a week, which, as a side income was really awesome. I wasn't charging nearly enough as I should have been. It was like $100 a session, but it was still good, right? It wasn't bad. So I did that for about 9 months. I got offered a business residency up in Tampa Bay to work with my mentor. The plan was to go back to Miami and then open up my own private practice there. They offered me to partner up with them 50-50, and I couldn't pass up that offer. So here I am.
Yay!
Yeah. I try to condense that as much as possible. I hope that was but
no, that's awesome. That was, a really good history, and, some good lessons too, like pointing out a lot of the things that I think when we first leave school, you feel that things are not right, or on your clinicals, you're like, I don't really like this, and you feel like you're alone and you can't really talk about it. But, as you and I know, with our vast network of people we talk to, and then, you guys here in the group too, I mean, there's 407 of us the last time I checked. There are a ton of people out there who feel the same way, and it's totally okay to make the jump and do something different. So yeah, I like all of that. Awesome. Cool. So tell us a little bit more about your present day. I know you and I've talked about it a little bit, but if you don't mind reminding me, tell us about your clinic, and then how you are helping other therapists as well.
Yeah, for sure. So basically the clinic, and I had trouble with this initially because I was going from a place where I was at my first job out of school, which is an interesting story even then, because I started learning the business and marketing stuff even before that fourth internship. And during that fourth internship, I convinced the owner to help me grow their business half of the time that I was there as a student. So I was actually learning the skills and I was implementing them for someone else's business. And that's actually why they ended up hiring me. But it was interesting because the cash-based, work that I was doing on my own, I was like, man, this is really nice, right? Number one, getting paid cash, not having to deal with insurance. And number two, it's just easier overall. And it was nice to do that, to have that one-on-one time with the client. So when I came up for the business residency, it was a little bit of I had to kind of go through the process on my, like, and really understand how it all was going to work, because where I'm at now with the private practice and building this clinic up, and getting it to the point where we have, it is insurance based. There was a bit of friction mentally first, but I started to realize that with a system in place, a good enough framework, and always making sure that that first and foremost you have the patient's health in mind, you can still make it work. Right? Are there still things that frustrate me like crazy? Absolutely. But there are ways to make it work, and it is, in a sense, easier to scale over time. Just a few things that are pros to it, right? And obviously, you can help a larger number of people that you otherwise might have more of a challenge converting, et cetera, et cetera. But there's pros and cons to everything, right? So basically, that's where we're at now. In the first less than 8 months, I grew it to 80 visits per week on my own, and then since then it's been pretty steady. Obviously, with the pandemic and coronavirus, took a dip, but it's pretty quickly climbing back up there. So basically, that's where we're at now. We have great systems that we take our patients through, and they get results. So it's definitely a setting where we're able to, the way we have it set up is physical therapists, PTAs that we treat as PTs. The only thing that they can't do is do evals, right? Everything else, because we have a specific system and framework, they're able to do and do really well. So it really gives us the opportunity to kind of step out and manage more of the business side of things, which I know for many people who just starting off might be like, well, I don't really want that. Like, I just want to treat patients, and that's totally fine. But at some point, you might want to go to the next level of business ownership as opposed to being, self-employed, which again, it's better than being employed, being an employee. But there are different levels to it depending on where you're at and what you want, right? So that's basically where we're at now. Have a receptionist. PTA was about to hire another PTA before COVID hit. So now we're getting back to that point where I'm bringing someone else onto the team, hopefully in the next couple of months. So I'm not sure if that was your question, but that's where we're at now.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. And I think that's really important to point out, is that, you were somebody who started off as like solo cash based, and like it's something that's completely and totally doable. If what you want, which is something that we do have to note, there are all kinds of different business models. If you just want to be able to support yourself, you can fly solo for a long time, for like as long as you want, and just hang out there at that level. But I think that sometimes, from things that I've seen on this lovely Facebook and everything, is there's like a little bit of friction even between like opinions of being in network, out of network, cash based, like how you should be doing things. And like the important thing to note is that they're all just different options, and you can go from one to the next, back to the first one, over to in-network. You can do it at whatever you want to do and what's going to serve you, your business, your dreams and goals, and then also your patient population. So, there's not one right way necessarily. It's kind of just whatever your vision is, and moving on from there.
Absolutely.
So let's see. So we started cash based. Can you tell us a little bit more about like you starting out 3 months out of school and doing your own thing?
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, at the end of the day, what I quickly realized was, well, I'm basically getting patients for the clinic that I was working with, which I actually enjoy. It was also insurance based. But I just love the population of people that I was working with. Obviously, I had a lot of, I was literally working like 25 hours a week, maybe 20 to 25 hours a week as a PT. And then the rest of the time I was working on the business, which I was like, this is awesome. So I was networking, building relationships with like Royal Caribbean, UPS. We did some work with them. And I was just, hosting workshops, doing all these things to get people in through the doors. And to be quite honest, like I love that stuff. Like I'm naturally an introvert, but when it comes to like building a business now, which is crazy because of the story from before, but I love doing that stuff. So at one point I was like, well, I'm doing all this work for them and I love being here, but I would definitely love to make some extra money. And I just kind of took matters into my own hands. And I was like, I literally just got hired, so I'm not going to ask for a raise. So let me just go ahead and figure out how I can do this on my own. And it happened pretty quickly, to be quite honest. I did the same things that I was doing for them, for myself, on my own time, and it worked really well. So things that I was doing. So I was a personal trainer at the time as well. Worked in the restaurant industry for about 7 years. After my third year PT, so I was like, no more, I'm done with this ish. So I started doing personal training. So I did get some clients from that for sure, from some relationships that I had built from other personal trainers. I only did personal training for about a year before I graduated. But that's how it kind of got going. And then I would do free injury screens at different gyms. And I would just try to get to talking to, I'm not even going to say as many people as possible because I was still working full time, and I was comfortable with what I was doing on the side, where I didn't have to do a ton of marketing like I'm doing now. So it's a little bit different.
Yeah, that makes sense for sure.
Yeah.
And I know, like you said, you were still working full time, but doing
Mhm.
this on the side. There are a lot of people here who are working full time,
Yeah.
and they're worried about starting their own thing on the side
Mhm.
because they're employed full time. So can
Yeah.
you tell us a little bit more about how, like, you had that conversation with your employer, if you did,
Yeah.
and how you kind of made that work?
Yeah, so it was more so. So I mean, everyone's situation is obviously pretty different, depending on things that you've signed. Obviously, you always want to talk to an attorney and make sure that if you are going to decide to do it, I would always have an open and honest conversation. That's always the best way to go. It's letting them know, like, straight up, listen, like I'm going to do everything that I can to either, if it's always thinking in terms of like what's in it for them, right? What's in it for my employer? Like, what is it that I can help them with? Where I say, and that's where you want to be, you want to level yourself up and raise your standards in terms of what you can do to help other people, even the people that you're working for. So figuring out what do they want, letting them know from like, hey, listen, I'm going to do everything in my power to, number one, make sure that our patients get quality care. Number two, what else do you need from me? Like, what else can I help you with? Right. And for me, it was being open and honest with them. It's like, listen, I know that I just started here, right? Or I know that it's hard for you to give me a raise, especially if you're working in an insurance-based clinic. It's based on like reimbursement with insurance companies many times, right? And if you know the numbers, you can you have more leverage, of course. I always recommend learning about the numbers and how that all works. But letting them know, listen, I know you can't pay me more, right? Even if they can, just saying that from the get-go. I know you can't pay me more. However, as you know, I do want to make more money. So what's going to happen is I'm going to go ahead and help you with anything that you need. Like I'll even, if whatever you want to say, I'll even work a few extra hours. Like I'll help you get more clients through the doors. I just wanted to let you know and be open and honest with you that I am going to be seeing some patients on the side, but it's not going to be like I'm taking people from you. It's going to be closer to my home area, right? You have to kind of figure out how to take the conversation, and really, obviously, you don't want to just make things up. You want to be open and transparent with them, and I think they will appreciate that. Now, if they don't, and there's some resistance to that, then you have some choices to make, right? You can either hold off, right? Find another job that maybe isn't as strict, or do some PRN work, not as strict. I always recommend that if you're diving into business, like unless you have money saved up and you're like, you know what, I'm good, don't completely quit your job right before starting your business. Like make sure that your business is growing and then slowly start lowering the hours of your full-time job, going, from full-time to part-time, then from, a little bit more than part-time, and then dropping down to part-time over here, and then kind of doing one of these, right? So I always recommend that for sure. But it's really hard to answer that question for everyone, because everyone's situation is a little bit different, but you kind of have to see, where you're at and the type of conversation you have to have with someone. But at the end of the day, I wouldn't hide anything from anyone. I think that always ends up, going south and not ended up that well. So for me, it was mostly that. It's like, hey, I know you can't pay me more. I need to make more money. This is what I'm going to do, but I can assure you that I'm going to help you grow your business while I grow mine on the side, and it's not going to affect what we're doing here and what we have. And it didn't, right? I ended up, the only reason why I left 9 months later is because I had an opportunity here. So I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing. And I know like everybody does kind of have a different story, a different situation about their workplace. But I've had like comments here and there that like there's no way that this is possible if you're working full time to do your own thing on the side. And like, well, some employers might feel that way. But like you're not the first person I've talked to who like their employer is okay with them doing something on the side, as long as it's not affecting your work at your full-time job.
Exactly.
And like you said, as long as you're completely open and transparent about it, I feel like most of the time it's going to be fine, So.
And for those times when it's not, and they get upset, that's probably not a place you're going to be wanting to work at long term anyway. So you'll quickly find that out, right? And that's and I know a lot of us, there's and I talked about it yesterday, but like scarcity mindset versus abundance mindset. I honestly believe that we can't help everyone on this planet, obviously, because there's way too many people and we're just one person. And some people we don't want to really work with anyway, right? So I think there's a lot of that that we have to work through ourselves, and also our employers do. So if we have that mindset, we have to understand where other people are coming from as well. And I think, understanding where people are at and then kind of figuring out how to bridge that gap like we do with our patients is definitely the first step.
Yeah, absolutely. So then kind of talking a little bit more about like the cash pay aspect, we've already talked about kind of like your marketing tactics and how you did find patients doing stuff on your own. How did you handle the who's going to pay me cash for services, and how do you handle the like, do you take my insurance question?
Yeah, that's a great question. So a lot of the conversations that I was having, and I said I wasn't charging too much. It was $100 per session. Looking back at it, I mean, I was a new grad out of school, so I was fine with it. But you can definitely charge more than that. I think a lot of those conversations where you have to have the conversations to close people onto your cash-based services, you want to provide a lot of value before the conversation even comes up. So I think there's a lot of that. And the way that I find even with what I do now, which is I go to different gyms, I do workshops, and I do injury screens. Like no one's really talking about insurance in those scenarios, in those places, right? So I go there, I do injury screens, I have conversations with people. It's 15, 20 minutes. They tell me what's going on. I figure out how long it's been going on for, what else they've tried in the past that's worked, that hasn't worked. And I tell them, hey, listen, based on what you've told me so far it's been 10 minutes, but based on what you've told me, this is what I think might be going on. And this is why it's happening. And I'll say the next step would be if you want to move forward and really get to the root of what's going on, we can set up a discovery visit, right? And that's maybe a 30-minute conversation, but now I'm slowly bringing them into my world and into the clinic. So once I get them in the discovery visit, what I typically do is it's typically scheduled either that week or the week after, but I recap everything that because people, I think we remember about 7% of what we hear, right? Yeah. And especially if we're bombarding our future patients with information, they're like, this was awesome. I have no idea what you just talked about, but I understand. I get it. Like, yeah, I need help. So I basically do the same thing at the discovery visit, a little bit more in depth and really focusing on their goals, right? What they need. And what I found is that when I do it that way, like very few people ask me about insurance, or I'll let them know, hey, we do take insurance. What we'll do is we'll give you a call. Right, we'll give you a call back. We'll give you a call. We'll get your benefit. We'll get your insurance information and all that. And then once you come in, we'll go ahead and discuss what your benefits are and what options there are. Does that sound good? People are like, yeah, that sounds great. Will some people say, oh no, I really want to know what insurance? Yeah, some will. But when you've done all that work up front, very few people will, because they've already started to build know, like, and trust with you. Right. Mm-hmm. So a lot of it is that people just don't know what else to ask. Right. That's the first thing that comes to mind. So again, it's one of those things where there's a lot of different scenarios. But what I found is that when you do provide that value up front, when you have like the next logical step, you can avoid a lot of those "do you take my insurance" questions. And when I get and not avoid them, but kind of deflect them until the time comes where you've provided enough value, they see the value in what you can do for them because you've gotten their goals, you've showed them a plan to get them to where they want to get to, and then you can go ahead and talk about the price. And when you do that, because the perceived value has increased in their eyes, because now they know what you even are going to do for them, then that resistance to cost is a lot less. So yeah, does that make sense? I don't know if I knew I was kind of all over the place, but okay.
No, you're fine. You're fine. Be confident.
Okay. Yeah. No,
you are definitely coherent.
Okay, cool. Perfect. All right.
I promise.
Okay.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think that is a really good way to go about things, because I think that is a question that, a lot of us, when we're first starting out and, we're opting to be out of network or cash-based, whatever it is, it's like scary, to say like, oh my God, like, what am I going to say? They ask about insurance, especially if like, some of us don't even really understand insurance to begin with,
For sure.
Which is like one of the reasons why I prefer not to use it.
Yeah.
And like that's what I talk to my clients about. That's what I encourage other therapists to do, is like really, interview, your potential client and see like if you guys would even be a good fit to work
together.
And like if you're really able to fix their problem, because like if somebody came to me with like a spinal cord injury and like wanted rehab for that, myself being somebody who's very comfortable working with low complexity athletes, that would probably not be like where I would want to start. And, in that case, like insurance isn't even relevant. I'm like online looking up somebody else to refer them to. And like I was just watching a video from Danny Mattei today too, and he recommended, if somebody says, do you take my insurance, and you say no, and that's like the first thing out of your mouth, then it kind of sets this like negative tone for the conversation too. For sure. Instead of like a little bit more of that abundance thing. Well, let me see what I can do to help you.
Exactly. And that's kind of like deflecting the conversation a little bit, where it's more like, hey, I'd love to answer that question for you. But before we do, let's even see if I can help you.
Exactly.
Like you said, and then you kind of deflect the conversation and ask them like, tell me a little bit more about what's been going on. Right. And now the longer, especially when you're asking someone to pay cash up front, whether it's $500, $1,000, $1,500, $1,500. Oh my goodness. That's a lot of money for PT. $1,500, $2,000, right? Like the more you have to spend more time with people in the beginning before they ever pay you, right? Like we just talked about. And when you do that a lot, like we said, a lot of that resistance goes down. So make sure you slow the conversation down. And what will happen is that if someone says, well, that sounds, like a lot of money, or I can't afford that, or it's too expensive, it's like, I can get that somewhere else for cheaper. Well, you absolutely can, right? You can get it for cheaper. But in my experience, I've found that you can't get something for really, really cheap and get it, very high quality too. So so you have to make a decision, like, do you want to go for the cheapest or do you want the best quality care? And it's like, I want the best quality care, of course. Great. Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there are little tactics and things that you can do here and there, but obviously I think just caring about the person, letting them know what's in their best interest, and just taking the time to listen to them, they're going to realize that when they go call, let's say the conversation goes a different direction and they're like, well, I'm going to go ahead and search around for a place that does take my insurance, right? It's like, hey, not a problem. What they're going to find is that they're not going to get the level of service that you were able to provide them. The person that they called on the phone did not spend 15, 20 minutes listening to them, right? And automatically they're going to notice a difference. And whether they decide to call you back or not, they might even refer someone else to you, right? It's happened time and time again. So just a few other, things to think about when you have that question come up, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And like it's so key to remember that like we as people just want somebody to care about us. And like you said, listen to us. That's like all you want. As people in general, but then especially when it comes to healthcare, because like it's so uncommon to have a provider actually spend time with you. You know, and like the people that I've worked with here where I live, you know, like patients are noticing, you know, that PTs are only spending like 5 or 10 minutes with them. And I've had multiple people tell me about those experiences, you know, and complain to me and be like, you know, I brought my PT gave me a piece of paper with 5 exercises on it, and I brought it with me every time and did the same exercises every visit, and they didn't work with me. And so that's their experience with physical therapy or OT or whatever it is. You know, and then like they aren't really sure what else to do. But so like now when we are able to offer these services that are super high quality, you know, the people that I work with right now, you know, they say like, you know, I pay you out of pocket because you pay attention to me.
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
Exactly. Yes. It's so true. It's so true. That's exactly it. I had something and I lost it, so it's gone now, but maybe it might come back. But yes, everything that Morgan said, yes.
just keep your hand out like that and see if it comes back.
Oh, no, not yet.
But yeah, and like it just, I really think that, you know, over the next few years, we're going to see a lot more people just going into private practice, whether it is cash, out of network, in network, whatever. There's going to be a lot more private practice. Did you find it?
I found it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I found it. No, it was simply that's why one of the like most important questions you could ever ask anyone is, have you had physical therapy before? Right. Or what else have you tried? Because if I don't ask that question and one of my selling points is something that they perceive is the same thing that they have had before, I've already lost them. So as simple as that question is, it's so important because that's going to show you what they've experienced in the past and why they might not buy from you. Right. Because if you sell physical therapy and they've gone through physical therapy, but they didn't get good quality care, and that was exactly what they got, the sheet of exercises where the PT spent 5 minutes with them and they didn't pay attention to them, they're going to think automatically that you're the same. And they're no way in hell going to give you $1,000, $1,500, $1,500 or $2,000 for what they perceive as something that they could have gotten for a lot cheaper. And, you know, it's just they're not going to do it. So super important.
Yeah, absolutely. And like, that is like a huge key thing, you know, you guys who are listening. And this is why like you're hearing me, Javi, David Bailiff, Josh Payne, Paul Goff, Danny Mattei talk about like, you can't sell physical therapy because it doesn't work. It just does not work anymore for that one reason, you know, is that the person you're talking to has probably tried physical therapy. And like the reason that they're not better is because like they didn't have a good experience. And so like that's what they associate with that. And so if you try to sell that term, it's not going to work. And also nobody knows what it is.
Exactly.
So
no idea.
take notes, you guys. Like just don't sell PT, don't sell OT, don't sell speech, sell the solution to the problem and you'll have way better luck. Yeah. There we go. So in all of your years of entrepreneurship, Javi, what has been like your number one challenge and how did you get over that challenge?
Number one challenge. Man.
It sounds like it's just been smooth sailing the whole time.
I don't think so. No, the thing is, it's hard for me. And I'm glad you say challenge because I'm a big believer in challenges and not failures. Because when someone asks me, like, tell me all about your failures, I'm like, I don't really see failures as failures. It's just another opportunity to learn and grow and move forward. So that's a good question. I would say the biggest challenge would be when it comes to growing. Is it when it comes to growing the business or starting it off or?
Well, most of us here are in like that 0 to 12 month range. So something there. Yeah.
So I think I would say just doing it. And I would say a lot of the reasons why we're fearful about starting a business is because we don't understand it. Right. And we haven't dove into it like if as an example, right. We went to physical therapy school for 3 years, right? Some 2, some 3. And if someone was to say, hey, you're going to provide physical therapy services to a patient, literally on day 0 of physical therapy school, you'd be freaking out. You'd be scared. You wouldn't know what to do. You wouldn't understand any of it. So you'd be like, no, I'm not doing that. Right. It's the same thing with business. The cool thing about business is that you don't have to take 3 years to learn it. Right. And there are things that you can do to avoid the mistakes. And the best way to actually learn is by doing. Right. So I would say is getting over that fear. There's a few ways to do it is by hiring someone, right? Hiring a mentor, hiring a coach to teach you what to do and what not to do. And to teach you about business, right? That's going to help you a ton. Just like think about it this way, we hire our professors to teach us something so that we can go and do it. Right. Except that price tag is $100,000, $150,000, $200,000 in 3 years. Right. When it comes to education on business skills, you're not hiring a professor to do it because obviously many of them haven't done it. You hire someone who has done it. Right. And many times for a lot less than $100,000 and for a lot less than 3 years. OK, yeah. So if you kind of think about it that way, I would say that's the biggest thing is getting past that fear, hiring someone from the get go just to help you through the process, to get rid of those fears, to allay those fears, and to tell you what to focus on and what not to focus on. I would say the other challenge, and relating it back to the question, the reason that was a challenge for me, it's a challenge for everyone. Initially, it's scary. You don't know what you're doing because you haven't learned how to do it, right? Which makes sense. So that's the first thing. The second thing is consistency, right? There's the issue with shiny object syndrome, and there's a lot of things that you can do, and everything works. It's just you have to make it work. Right. You have to make it work. And the way you make it work is by doing it for long enough to see it through. And I would say that's the biggest challenge is because like everyone else, I do suffer from that. Right. From shiny objects. And it's like, oh, that's a cool thing. I'm going to go do that instead. Right. So I would definitely say like if something's working, keep doing the thing that's working. And if you've gotten to the point where you're like, you know what, I'm starting to get some steam. There are a few opportunities that have come up. It might be the time to hire someone to do the thing that was working. Don't let it go. Cause I see a lot of people that once they get busy, so this is a challenge actually, right? Okay. I found it. So once people get busy, guess what they stop doing? They stop doing the thing that got them to that point. So then what happens is there's this dip that happens. It's like, oh my God, what's happening? Like I was doing so well. Where'd all my patients go? Right? Well, guess what? You stopped doing the thing that got you to that point. So you have to figure out a way to continue doing that even as you get busier with your patients, right? And I think there's a point of getting comfortable, right, with the number of patients you have. So that's also something to think about is like, what are my end goals, right? What did I go into business for at the end of the day? And always reminding yourself of that, because as you grow and your business starts to take off, there's that next level that you want to achieve. So I would say that's the biggest challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that those are all great challenges, things to work on. So like the fear of the unknown is like, you kind of have to get over it, because honestly, like nobody knows what they're doing. Like everybody's just trying to learn, as they go. And, those of us who have started a business, we're just like a day ahead of you, or wherever we are. We're just a little bit ahead of you. And that's one thing that I really like about business is that like it kind of is an even playing field when you get started, is like it's an entire learning process, and you keep learning the entire time. And there's always people to reach out to, and like there's things you can change and all that stuff. Yeah. And I think that that's an important point that you brought up too, is that you don't have to do it all alone, especially if you are like looking to level up, like level 2, level 3 into your business, is that you do have to start to ask for help in order to keep things going. And
you don't have to. You can spend 10, 15, 20 years figuring it out on your own. Like that's fine. It just depends on how much time you have. I am trying to collapse time so I can spend the most time doing the things that I really want to do, like traveling, spending time with family, playing with my kittens.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's why like a lot of us do want to go into business for ourselves, is because of that dream life, like something that we can take charge of our life and not be like trapped. But like you said, if you don't ask for help, you're going to spend years and years and years trying to figure it out. And you're going to end up working way more than you would have at a regular job. And you'll never get to that dream life. And so asking for help is a good thing too.
Yeah. Yeah. It just depends on how fast you want the results. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And so like for people here in this group, you know, it's mainly people who are new grads, people who are considering starting their own practice but aren't really sure. You know, what advice would you give them? And I feel like we kind of already went over it, but you know, what's like top like one or two pieces of advice that you might have for somebody who's like on the fence about starting their practice?
Yeah, I would say probably the first thing would be is personal development, right? I think business is like the best personal development journey that you'll ever go on. But you have, yeah, oh, is it there? Look at that. Great minds think alike. So that's, I mean, you can see all these books, right? Those are not physical therapy books. Right. That's not any anatomy books, physiology books. That's all personal development, right? Business, personal development, marketing. You have to feed your brain with the right stuff, right? The right brain food. And because what happens is our brain is designed to survive, right? So we're always looking for what's wrong. And you can't, I mean, just in life in general, but in business specifically, you can't always be in that zone. Like you have to be feeding your mind with positive thoughts, with positive people around you. So a network is probably the second thing, is find that network of people that think a little bit differently, that are doing things that you want to do, and listen to them. Right. I would say the biggest mistake that people do is they listen to people who don't have the lifestyle that they want. And whenever anyone tells you something about anything, you have to analyze and examine for yourself. Like, does this person live the life that I want? A lot of the times when people are holding us back, they're not doing it on purpose. They're not doing it because malintent. Most you'd hope so, right? They're doing it because they're kind of reflecting their fears on you, right? And you always want to ask yourself, like, okay, is this person that's giving me advice on, let's say business in this case, on starting my own business, are they telling me that because they've done it themselves? If they haven't done it themselves, and don't listen to them. And number two, if they have done it themselves and they're telling you from experience, did they do all the things that we're telling you to do? Did they hire a coach? Did they learn the business skills? Did they stay consistent, right? What does that even look like? Kind of same thing with physical therapy. What did you try to grow your business, right? What did you do, right? Figure all that stuff out and then examine it for yourself. And if there are people that are successful, that are doing the things, that do have the life that you want, listen to them. I think that's probably the best piece of advice that I can give you.
For sure. Yeah. I think that's awesome. That's a really good piece of advice.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, we are just about to wrap up. It's self-promo corner time. So tell us about like the current like project that you're working on right now and how we can best support you.
Yeah, for sure. So it's basically like Morgan's online course, the mini course that she created. Go through that. It's going to be awesome. It's going to blow your socks off. If you're wearing socks, and a lot of people don't wear socks nowadays, especially if you're working from home. So, so go through that. I do have online course as well. It's super helpful, and it's going to help you with a mindset portion of all of this. And it's going to get you to think big picture as to what needs to happen for your life to look a certain way, if that is what you want. So, I would say going through that is definitely going to make you realize that you need Morgan's help to get started. Okay. And go through it, examine it for yourself. I might be wrong, but it's going to definitely get you to think about what you want. Cause I feel like many times we're like forced into a career, forced to think about what we want our career to be, our job to be, all these things, but we never really think about what we want in life. So I would say it's even more so than a business course. It's more of a mindset course. So that's something it's a project that I've been working on for some time. And I really did it. It's also a free course. And I did it because I know that we all have great intentions at heart, and we really want the best, not only for ourselves, but for our patients. And I truly am 100% believer in that. The best way that you can not only change your life for the better, but also your patients' lives for the better, is to start a business. So it's really about really flipping that switch in your mind from thinking, you know what, maybe it's something that I'll do one day, or I don't know, we'll kind of see, to like, oh shoot, this is the only path, right? So once you finish that course, reach out to Morgan and she'll tell you what to do next.
Awesome. Cool. Yeah, that's amazing. And I'll have to talk to you a little bit more after this about that mindset piece. But I think a lot of us get really, really caught up in like strategy and tactics, and like I need my checklist of things. And that's what I specialize in, because I love all of that stuff. But we have to remember that mindset is a huge piece, of keeping yourself going and making sure that you're not giving up.
Prerequisite to success in anything that you do. So
yeah, absolutely. And I love that you brought up like asking yourself what you do really want, because that's something that like personally I've reflected on, in the past years. I feel like starting a business helped me give myself permission to like say what I want. Like there's not really another opportunity to do that. And it's also totally okay to want different things.
Exactly.
So awesome. Cool. How can people contact you?
Facebook, message me. You have any questions, just add me as a friend. I obviously don't bite. So you can friend request me and send me a message, and that'll work.
Okay. Awesome. All right, cool. Well, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. And for you guys listening, for you guys watching, Javier and I are both like really gung-ho about helping people start their practices. I don't know if you noticed or not. But we both specialize in different things. So if this is something that you are interested in doing, please feel free to reach out to either of us, and we are very happy to help you. So awesome. Well, thank you again.
Thank you so much, Morgan. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Everybody have a good day.